So looking at the transfer window, deadline's looming, Myles. Villa are doing really well at the minute, as we know. Unai Emery has had a really, really positive start to his time there. He's established them really, hasn't he? But who does he go for? Does he go for anybody in this last couple of days of the transfer window? What are you hoping for, man?
I hope we are active on the final day. I think we've done a bit of great business already. Alex Moreno looks like a fantastic addition, and actually, with Luca Dean's injury record, it makes sense to bring in a really quality replacement for him at left back rather than someone who's happy to sit on the bench when Dean is fit. Someone that's going to push him and fight him for that starting place. So that's a really great business. Duran coming in looks like a really exciting prospect as well. So two really nice signings so far. But I think what Emery's tried to do mainly is kind of trim off the dead wood so far.
Had
We've
to.
had a lot of players coming out of the club. So obviously Morgan Sanson's gone out on loan. Frederick Gilbert's gone. It looks like Marvelous Nakamba's going to go maybe even to West Brom apparently
Wow.
tomorrow. There's a lot of changes in the club. Augustinsen's loan was cancelled. So was Jan Bednarek's. Danny Ings never really settled. So it looks like Emery's trying to build the squad himself.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm worried about, it's not even a big worry, but the squad's looking very thin all of a sudden because we've let a lot of players go. There's talk that more will follow. Maybe Callum Chambers is going to leave as well. I don't know. Our midfield's looking light in particular now. We've only got two forwards in the squad, really, maybe three now. We've got Duran, obviously, but there's definitely a need to bring some bodies in. And there's a few that he's kind of identified that I'd like to see kind of move in the next day or so.
Well, you've said there's been a few departures already. Deadwood, you called it. Is that the way you saw them as well? Do you think most Villa fans will have seen those players that are leaving as surplus to requirements, not of the required quality? And also, does that free up enough funds to kind of go out and buy some squad players to kind of boost the ranks a little bit?
I think the only one that Villa fans will be slightly disappointed to see go is Danny Ings. And not disappointed because it's a mistake, but just disappointed they didn't work out as well as we would have liked it to.
Yeah.
Now, he's our top scorer this season, so he's not been awful by any stretch, but it clearly wasn't the right fit at times. And with Watkins there already, he just struggled to really establish himself. But the rest of them, yeah, everyone wanted to see Morgan Sanson succeed. Everyone wanted to see Frederick Gilbert succeed, but it was just clear that was never going to happen. They weren't getting anywhere near the team, really. Gilbert wasn't even in the squad at the start of the season, so it makes sense to make those moves now.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about freeing up funds because Villa have got the money, but I think freeing up space in the squad so that you don't end up with disharmonious players and people that don't want to be at the club there. It's good to move those players on, but as long as you address the gaps, and it's hard to do that in January, particularly as time is ticking.
I'll tell you what, you mentioned Robin Olsen a few times and how he needs to be replaced. Is there anything in the pipeline for a goalkeeper? Because Martinez is the clear number one. He's world class. Is anyone in the frame for that?
It's hard to address that until you've sorted out what goes on with Emi Martinez, because you imagine that a lot of big clubs will look at him
Yeah.
and you want him to just make sure he's as committed to Villa as he's always seemed to be. He's only recently signed a new long-term contract. He's wearing the captain's armband for most games now, but I don't think Villa will go in for a goalkeeper until they've kind of really got a plan there, because there was talk that him and Emery weren't getting on, but that seems ludicrous to me. Your priority has got to be just keeping Emi Martinez happy. And then our youth system has produced some pretty good goalkeepers recently. We've recalled Sinisau as well, so
Yeah.
maybe he'll stay around and compete. I'm not too worried about that area. I think it's further up the pitch that we've got to start looking at some depth. And there are a few names obviously on the radar.
Thinking of the Premier League table as well, we try to gauge what Villa's ambitions are now. I think Unai Emery's transformation of the Villa team has made Villa fans more optimistic than ever, really. Within realistic realms, I would say, but top 8 looks realistic now. Never mind top 10. You know, the gap between Villa and the teams below them is getting bigger. I can't see that changing anytime soon because the quality below them isn't anywhere near as good as what Villa have been producing. What is the aim now? How high can Villa go?
We'll learn that from what they do in the transfer market, I think, to a degree.
Right.
I think they will be aiming for top half. I think top 8, is realistic. That is what we should be looking to aim for. The only thing that concerns me is you saw at the start of the season how much the impact of Boubacar Kamara's injury had on us.
Yeah, massive.
And if something like that were to happen again, then have we got the depth to cover those areas? We're getting Diego Carlos back soon. You don't know what kind of fitness levels he'll be at. But if we received an injury to Ollie Watkins or Leon Bailey or, like I say, Douglas Luiz or Kamara, that's going to be a struggle now. So you can see why Emery is mentioning a few names in the market that he kind of wants to go after. That, I think, will be the most important thing for us now.
And finally, do you think like a top 10 or top 8 finish this season will be enough to hold on to the likes of Emi Martinez? Do you think there's any chance his head could be turned in the summer?
I think it will, because he seems to acknowledge that Villa are the club that really built him up, and he's so integral to that club that I
Yeah.
can't see why he would want to go elsewhere. I think the other thing that will keep him is bringing in players that show that Villa are making progress. Now, obviously, we've been linked really heavily with Guendouzi. That, to me, is a statement signing in this window, which is quite rare. Normally, you expect to make your big signings in the summer, but I think Villa have to act now if they want to establish themselves where they should be.
Yeah.
And Guendouzi would be a great way of doing that. There's other players that obviously Villa are lining up that I think would improve the squad, and that's the sort of thing that's going to motivate players to stay. There's talk that they're backing for Ismail Assar from Watford. That would be a great signing. It's exactly what Villa need. He's 24. He's lightning quick. He will terrify Premier League defences. And one thing that Villa have really done well over the last few games, particularly at home, is they like to start games really fast and take the game to the opposition within the opening 5 minutes. You'll notice that Villa have started attacking the whole end in the first half at home instead of the second, which is really unusual for a lot of teams. But look how beneficial it's been. Really
Yeah.
often they're getting that early goal, and someone like Sarr really complements that style and can bring that fast run in at a defence, getting them thinking about something early on in the game, because sometimes you have to wake up to a game and you find yourself growing into it. I'd like to see us have a bit more intent there. And then, really, if we can bring in an elite striker to play alongside or in place of Ollie Watkins, that's the key. There's a couple of players being linked. Moussa Dembele was obviously talked about, but I think he's agreed a fee with Southampton today, which is a bit of a shame, but I think we could do better. Jonathan
Yeah.
David's the one that I'm looking at. If we can bring David in, I'd be so happy. That's an elite signing for Villa, definitely. He's got such a great potential. He's already shown in Liga and what he can do. That's the kind of player that Villa need to look at now. They supposedly put in an offer for Nico Williams. that
Amazing.
that was always going to be ambitious, and it was going to be difficult to get him away. But there's obviously areas that Villa need to address. I want us to look at an attacker in particular, and there's a few on the market that I think we could consider.
We've had a lot of Villa fans follow the channel now, and they'll no doubt be getting carried away, as we've been reading in the comments as well, about the kind of turnaround that Villa have had this season. Are you getting carried away? How optimistic are you?
I don't think I'd call it carried away. I think I am excited by it again. And the good thing about Villa is we've had periods over the last few years where we've allowed ourselves to be excited again, and it's
Yeah.
worked out. We had a very difficult tenure. Post Martin O'Neill, it was really hard to be a Villa fan for a long time.
Yeah.
And you felt the club kind of build that back up when they got their new ownership in under Dean Smith, and that kind of push from the Championship in our first couple of seasons in the Premier League. It was easy to fall in love with Villa again. And they've been really smart with that. The new owners have really developed that kind of culture of getting behind the team, showing immediate growth. They always are targeting, can we improve on last season? And the fact that they're buying into that encourages us as fans to buy in and get a bit carried away, I suppose. But I don't think it's even about that anymore. I think it's about being realistic and being ambitious. You don't want to fade into one of those clubs that just accepts mid-table every season,
Yeah.
because after a while, what's the point? Really, I hate to name names, but what's the point in being Crystal Palace, really? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're
Yeah.
never really going to do anything, except for the odd anomaly where Leicester fly up the table. You want to show that commitment to kicking on. We talked about Brighton on the podcast doing that. Villa are in a great position to do that. They've got an incredible fan base, a beautiful historic stadium. They're in the second city. They've got an elite manager now, and the finances to back him. So I don't think it might sound overly optimistic. It might sound like I'm getting carried away, but actually, I just think I understand where my club are at right now, and I'm really excited to be on that journey with them. I really hope that it pays off the way that we deserve.